You're listening to Unearthed, Gold and the Unknown, where lost riches wait in the dark and restless spirits guard what's buried below. Dare to dig deeper.
Okay, Nathan, so I've been thinking about this all week, and I still can't decide if Vulture Mine is fascinating or just one long example of humanity making very intense choices under very hot conditions.
I think it's both, honestly. It's fascinating because of what they accomplish out there, and it's intense because every accomplishment seems to have come with a side of, well, that escalated quickly.
That's fair. And the fact that it's right outside Wickenburg makes it feel closer somehow. Like, this isn't abstract Wild West history, this happened here.
Yeah, and not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. We're talking about Vulture Mine. And every time I read more about it, I get stuck on how quickly everything grew and how quickly everything unraveled.
So, it's 1863. Arizona's still a territory, and Henry Wickenburg follows a wounded vulture into the desert, which, I'm sorry, it already feels like the start of a warning story.
Right? Because if nature sends you a scavenger bird as a guide, maybe pause for a second and ask what that symbolism might mean before building an empire around it.
Instead, he finds quartz glittering in the sun, and that glitter turns into over 340,000 ounces of gold over the life of the mine.
And that kind of wealth changes everything. It changes who shows up, who stays, and how people behave when money starts pouring out of the ground in ways they've never seen before.
It wasn't just romantic prospecting either. They built a 20 stamp mill, huge machinery crushing ore constantly.
And that means this isn't quiet desert living. It was mechanical pounding day and night. Iron slamming into rock over and over, dust in the air, ground vibrating. It must have felt like they were living inside of a machine that never shut off.
And in 110-degree summers.
Which makes the whole thing even more intense because you're already exhausted from the heat. Dehydration is a real risk, and then you're adding explosives and heavy machinery underground.
But hey, gold.
Yes, gold. Gold has historically convinced humans to ignore every warning sign thrown at them.
And then you've got Vulture City growing around it. There's a hotel, saloons, a schoolhouse, there's even families.
And that's the part that always surprises me too, is kids were growing up there. There were classrooms and there was dinner tables within earshot of stamp mills and explosives. It wasn't just rough miners, it was an actual community trying to function normally next to something fundamentally unstable.
And everything depended on this mine.
Which creates pressure. If the gold stops, the town stops. If someone steals gold, it's not just theft, it's a threat to everyone's survival.
And that's where the hanging tree comes in. At least a dozen men were executed for allegedly stealing gold.
And what unsettles me isn't just the number, it's how fast those decisions were probably made. Territorial Arizona didn't exactly have structured court system with appeals and lengthy deliberations.
No due process, just suspicion and a rope.
Which tells you how high tensions were. Gold theft wasn't seen as a petty crime. It was seen as betrayal, sabotage, maybe even an existential threat.
Still, that's extreme.
It is, and I think that's why the place feels heavy even now, because the emotional intensity of that kind of environment doesn't just vanish when the mine closes.
So, visitors today are still reporting things. Things like footsteps, voices, shadows near the hanging tree area.
And what's interesting is that these reports even happen during guided tours in broad daylight with other people around. It's not just someone wandering alone at midnight with a flashlight and a dramatic imagination.
Caretakers have talked about the doors closing on their own, tools being moved, sudden cold spots in buildings that should feel like ovens.
Which could be environmental, Old wood shifts, winds echo, heat does strange things to perception. But when similar stories come up again and again over decades, it makes you wonder if places like that carry some kind of imprint.
Do you mean a residual energy kind of thing?
Maybe not ghosts in the traditional sense, but emotional residuals. The kind left behind when fear, greed, desperation, violence are all mixed together in one place for many years.
Okay, but I'm serious now. If we went, like actually went, and did the full guided tour of the Vulture Mine, walked through the stamp mill, stood near the assay office, maybe paused near the hanging tree, would you be completely calm?
Completely calm feels ambitious. I would be composed, but there's a difference between being rational and being unaware of context. When you're standing somewhere that saw industrial accidents, financial ruin, and at least a dozen executions tied to gold theft, it's hard to not let that history sit in your chest a little.
So you'd be doing the thing where you pretend everything's fine, but you're quietly scanning your surroundings.
I would be observant. There's nothing wrong with situational awareness in a place where frontier justice was once handled with alarming efficiency.
Handled with alarming efficiency? Oh, there's a calm way to describe hanging people.
I'm just saying, when you're in a territorial Arizona in the 1860s and law enforcement isn't consistent, justice becomes expedited.
That's such a diplomatic word.
I try.
Okay, but let's escalate. Sunset tour, the lights dropping, the desert gets that weird quiet where even the wind sounds different. You're standing near where the hanging tree once was, and someone says they just heard footsteps behind them. What do?
Well, first of all, I would confirm whether those footsteps belong to a member of the tour group who decided to dramatically reposition themselves. Second, I would calmly acknowledge that old wood structures expand and contract with temperature shifts, which can produce sounds that resemble movement. Third, I would probably move slightly closer to an exit while continuing to appear completely reasonable.
So you would absolutely be repositioning.
Strategically.
What if a caretaker told you they've heard whispering in the assay office, like actual names being called?
I would assume acoustics before apparitions, but I would also quietly ask follow-up questions because when multiple unrelated people report similar experiences across decades, even a skeptic has to admit there's at least a psychological or environmental pattern worth noting.
So you'd pretend that you're not intrigued, but you'd be very intrigued.
I would be academically intrigued while emotionally maintaining a safe distance.
But what if we stayed until closing and the tour guide casually says, oh, by the way, some people feel cold spots in that building?
Cold spots in Arizona are immediately suspicious because that requires effort. If I feel a sudden drop in temperature in a structure that's been baking all day, I'm not immediately yelling, ghost, but I'm absolutely evaluating airflow patterns and possible drafts with an intense focus.
And if there's no draft?
Then I would very calmly suggest we conclude our visit and debrief somewhere with electricity and functional plumbing.
You wouldn't do a night investigation, would you?
Angel, the sun going down in the desert changes the entire atmosphere. The temperature drops fast, the lights disappear quickly, and then when you're surrounded by preserved 19th century structures tied to violent events and economic desperation, your brain starts filling in blanks. I don't need to volunteer for that experiment.
So that's a no.
That is an informed no.
I feel like I'd be fine during the day, but the moment I remembered that at least a dozen men were executed there over alleged gold theft, I'd start thinking about how intense the paranoia must have been. Like, imagine being accused in that environment.
And that's what makes it heavy. It wasn't random violence, it was a financially motivated fear. Gold was the lifeline of Vulture City. That wasn't just theft, it was perceived as sabotage. That kind of communal anxiety leaves a mark.
So you're saying that even if there aren't ghosts, there's definitely emotional residue?
I'm saying that human intensity imprints places, whether we interpret that imprint psychologically or paranormally.
You're so careful.
I prefer measured.
Okay, fine. If we're going, what are we bringing?
Water. A lot of water, because history is fascinating, but dehydration is not.
Sunscreen, obviously, because nothing says serious historical investigation like a sunburn.
Comfortable boots, because uneven 19th century ground combined with modern curiosity is a trip hazard.
A hat. Wide brim, dramatic, but practical.
A fully charged phone, not for ghost photos, but because territorial Arizona did not prioritize cell phone service.
Snacks, because low blood sugar plus ghost stories is not the vibe.
A healthy respect for history.
And maybe a small flashlight.
It's daytime.
And
Fine, a flashlight, but we're not using it to investigate anything. It's purely practical.
sure, practical.
And perhaps a reminder that we are there for historical education, not to challenge any lingering entities to prove themselves.
So no dramatic, if anybody's here, give us a sign.
Absolutely not. That is how poor decisions begin.
You're no fun.
I'm alive. There's a difference.
Okay, but honestly, I kind of want to go.
I do too. I just want to go responsibly, hydrated, during the daylight, and with a clear understanding that the past doesn't need to be provoked to be respected.
That might be the most Nathan sentence ever.
I take that as a compliment.
I think that's what makes Vulture Mine so compelling, though. It's not just a ghost story, it's human nature under pressure.
Exactly. It's ambition, survival, fear, wealth, and justice. Or the lack thereof. All compressed into one desert location. Whether or not there are ghosts, there's definitely history that hasn't softened with time.
And the fact that you can still walk through it today makes it feel close.
Which might be why it lingers in people's minds. Not because it's haunted in some dramatic horror movie way, but because it forces you to confront how quickly prosperity can turn into paranoia.
And how far people will go when gold is involved.
Historically speaking, very far.
This has been Unearthed, Gold and the Unknown.
Where we dig into the past,
Question what's left behind.
and occasionally wonder why some places don't come with a waiver.